Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Steven Pynakker. And so, folks, here we have another book review. So basically, what I like to do is talk to different people on various forums, especially early on as I was getting acquainted with Mormonism. I spent a lot of time actually on Reddit before I started getting active on Facebook. And there I actually found a couple authors that nobody had ever heard of that wrote books discussing Mormonism, whether it was their personal journey or somebody who did a very interesting book on Mormon Doctrine. In particular, it's called Obscure Mormon Doctrine by Chris Jensen. And I reached out to him because he was talking about his book. And I said, I'd be very curious for you to send me a copy of it because I'd like to read it, check it out, and perhaps have you on as a guest. So he sent me a copy of the book. And I went through it, and I actually had Nathan Smith, who used to be with Fair Mormon as a young apologist, and I actually had him go through the book to kind of vet it. And he told me that the research was very thorough, very well documented, and so this is really a great resource. What he did was he kind of created an encyclopedia of obscure Mormon doctrine. And when I say obscure, it's the kind of doctrine that maybe used to be taught, or was well known, or was taught in some quarters, whether it was taught by an apostle and a prophet, a general authority, something that was widely popular and taught by many people. Like, for instance, Adam God. He talks about the Adam God Doctrine, blood atonement, mother in heaven, various degrees of exaltation, that things about the premortal existence that are not taught in regular Christian circles. So also doctrines that are also unique to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So as I went through this book, I just found it really fascinating because he talks about just doctrines and stuff that many people haven't heard of or were better known in the past. But he has it broke down in, like, for instance, he has a chapter on the millennium, chapter on mother in heaven, a chapter on the priesthood, race, salvation of the dead, of course, the baptism of the dead, blood atonement, the word of wisdom, the location of the Garden of Eden, the Adamic language spoken up to the period of time all the way up to the Tower of Babel. So I was just really fascinated by the book because I thought this was written by an Orthodox, devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who really, really did his research and took the time to study and get the sources right. And that's what I like about it. It's very well researched, very well footnoted. And so this is something, if you're just getting into studying Mormonism, whether you're an evangelical, and I have a lot of evangelicals watching the channel now and are doing research on Mormonism, this would be a great place to start. And also those who are faithful members, if you want to know some of the doctrines that maybe your grandparents believed in, or your great-great-grandparents, or the pioneers believed in, this would be a great resource as well. Things happened in the 1950s. It was called correlation, started by David O. McKay. And as a result, a lot of these doctrines that were once widely taught in some quarters or widespread began to disappear. And so members of the church don't really know their history or their legacy of what many of their ancestors taught and believed. So this would be a great resource for this. But the most fascinating thing to me about this whole thing was, like I said earlier, I thought this was written by an Orthodox believer. Turns out he left the church decades ago. And that's what made it so fascinating. He didn't have an axe to grind. He literally just wanted to tell the story of different doctrines. He found it's so fascinating. And so he was a last name Jensen, a very well-known family. As a matter of fact, when his mother read the book, she went to him and said, "Oh, wow, I mean, does this mean you're going to baptize your son into the church?" Because that's how she felt, how pro it was in regards to talking about the different doctrines of the church. So very fascinating to me. Makes you kind of think that not everybody that leaves the church is an anti-Mormon. Some of them actually still have an interest in it, and he wanted just to present doctrines that had been previously taught in a way that's accessible for people. It's a great starting point for those of you who want to delve into deep Mormon doctrine and find out about some of the doctrines that were taught or are still believed by members but aren't widely discussed to the outside world. So here is the official book review of Obscure Mormon Doctrine, Uncommon Beliefs of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints by Chris Jensen. Obscure Mormon Doctrine is a great resource for anyone interested in getting into deep Mormon doctrine. From Adam God to blood atonement to mother in heaven to the location of the lost 10 Lost Tribes of Israel, and everything in between. When I began reading the book, I was convinced that it was written by a well-informed Orthodox member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Upon meeting the author on a Zoom call, he revealed that he left the faith many years ago. Whether you're a faithful member or someone who is just curious about some lesser-known Mormon doctrine, I highly recommend this book, and I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I'm going to leave a link in the description for the interview that I did with Chris Jensen earlier last year, and so you can also watch the interview as well. And I would recommend that you maybe pick up the book and add it to your collection. I also want to remind you that please support our Patreon page. I will leave a link for that for those of you who would like to financially support this channel. And then also don't forget our podcast, which is also available on Apple and other major sources. For podcasts, I also want to remind you to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification button to be informed when a new video is out. You all have yourself a great day.